Nate will be back in just a little bit. Of course, we got plenty of stuff to talk about coming up in just a moment. But Fitz, recruiting always something churning, and not that we have a full show for this later in the week. But what are the things that interested you from this weekend in Penn State recruiting?
Yeah, wrote about it this weekend. Interesting, some movement down in Florida. Brian Harris, a defensive lineman from Mandarin High School in Jacksonville, ended up decommitting from Maryland. Why is that significant? He picked up a Penn State offer earlier in the week. He has a bunch of visits that are he's like all over the map. He was committed to Maryland. Brian Williams was the defensive coordinator there. Brian Williams close with the family, so he committed to Maryland early. But a lot of schools have come along since then. You look at his official visit list, and Stanford's on there, and he wants to get up to Penn State. That one's not set yet, but NC State. He's just kind of all over the place. South Carolina. So there's a lot to like, and I'm arguing with myself if I called him Brian Allen or Brian Harris.
No, you nailed it.
Okay, good deal. It's just that stuff replays in my head sometimes, and I just can't get over it. So I appreciate that. But now Stanford's in there, West Virginia's in there, NC State's in there, South Carolina. Not typically the four schools you see lumped together, but that one will come along. He plays edge. He's probably a defensive, like an interior prospect, about 6'4", 290.
Yeah.
Nice player. Like he's got a nice tool set to play with. And you look at what Penn State has done on the defensive line, and kind of fits what they like to do. They found, I mean, he's kind of a body type, sort of similar to a Liam Andrews type, where you can see him growing into. He's listed at 290. He does not look 290, which I'm not sure who did the measurements, but he's got some. If he's 290, he moves about as well as a 290 pounder has. We will see what happens if he makes it to campus. He does expect to make it to campus. He's also got some connections to the Philly area via his father. So you got that going for him. But Penn State continues to take a look at. I would say, I don't want to say load up, but they offered a ton of offensive linemen yesterday. They've offered a bunch of defensive tackles. Carter Gooden up in New England just picked up an offer this weekend. So it's not about guys going elsewhere, but this is the time of year when you're starting to have your meetings and you're starting to figure out that candidate, or that tier of candidates where it's like, okay, maybe we can get official visit for these guys. Maybe we need to sort of reinforce the board more so than anything, because you look at Damari Simeon and Alex Haskell, guys at the top of the board in the interior, but then you've got guys like Harris, guys like Gooden, that sort of, hey, you want as many options as possible, and you don't want to find yourself out in the dust. And if we're honest here, like putting out an offer right now doesn't bind you to anything. Like it's not a situation where you have to take a kid if you make an offer right now. So might as well get your name out there as much as possible. And I think we're seeing that on both lines right now, with Deion Barnes, with Phil Troutwine, and there is where we're going. We're in. Whoops, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, this is also the time of year where there's been some development, right? Like you're reassessing where players are in terms of like how they've grown and what you've seen from them on film. And it feels like you talk about, like, don't get enamored with the early names, because especially at these kind of positions, development throughout the process is as important as who's big early. Is this a landmark of that? Or is this just kind of, as you said, a resetting or reinforcement of certain things?
Yeah, I mean, you want to see sort of that ascent, and you're seeing with a lot of guys, and you're seeing a lot of guys level off, and really that's what I keep going back to, is this process and this cycle is so long that names are going to peak early, names are going to fall, names are going to pop back up on the radar late. Like there's no right way to go about this, because it's all so random in a sense. So you're seeing guys, like if you look back to the last class, there were guys that ended up in the last class that did not have offers at this point. I'm looking, okay, so for example, we're looking at tight end this year, and tight end, sorry, a bit of an outlier because they took 3 last year. It's going to be tough to sign a top line guy because of that. So you got an official visit set up with Max Sutter for June. Max Sutter probably up there at the top. There's a couple of other guys that are in that realm, but Penn State can afford to be choosy because it's tight end. But like, I'm looking at this board and thinking Penn State's tight end in the class of 2026 may not even have an offer yet, because of the way that they discover these guys in the spring. I mean, Luke Reynolds didn't have an offer at this point. He ended up as the number 1 tight end, I think, with us in the class of 2024. So like, when you offer, you can say plan A, plan B, plan C. Stuff really doesn't add up anymore. So I'm very curious how this is going to go. with several positions. Now, Penn State's got 9 commitments in the class of 2026. They've started off really well. They've got some spots where they have, there's 3 receivers in this class, so you can afford to be a little bit more choosy. I know Penn State fans just want to take everybody at receiver because
Yeah.
they fix that room, and they absolutely do. I have no argument with that. But you've got the opportunity to sort of feel some things out and get yourself to June at that position. Still want to get better at, everywhere. The offensive line, the defensive line are big points of emphasis right now. But you've got your quarterback in. Running back is very interesting. Cy Mickens is committed. There's no secret he's going to check out his options here. Very tied to Jaywan Sider. I still think Penn State's got a great chance to land his signature, but at the same time, Stan Drayton's going to come in. He's going to have his guys that he's been monitoring, albeit at a different level at Temple, and he's going to get some new eyes on he's got to get some eyes on some new prospects as well. So that's going to be fascinating.
Yeah.
Probably add 2 running backs. I say that with the notion that there's a lot of running backs on campus on scholarship right now. But that's a position churn as well. So it's just very interesting all around. And again, the guys that have the offers first don't necessarily mean they're the best prospects. The guys that have the high ratings first don't necessarily mean they're going to be the best players in college. And I think you're seeing a reflection of that in just basically how Penn State's gone about this cycle. And a lot of, like, this is not just a Penn State thing. A lot of schools have discovered hidden gems in February and March.
Yeah. I took a look at Brian Harris's full game film, and he's an interesting football player. So if you want to check out any of that from his advanced scouting, bluewhiteillustrated.com. Great time to remind you if you want Fitz's thoughts. He wrote an in-depth article about Andrew Olish, getting everybody to know him a little bit better. Of course, Nate has his articles at bluewhiteillustrated.com detailing different aspects, freshmen that we talked to, which we may or may not be getting to here on the show in just a little bit. But all of that right now you can get for $1. And previously, we had this conversation that you get $1, then you try it out for a week, and then you sign up for the full year at full price. Well, now it's $1 a week for a year. So you pay $1 a week, and that's it. So if you sign up right now, you get just an unbelievably good deal for a year's worth of access to bluewhiteillustrated.com, the best Penn State football content there is out there. And I say that being very proud of the work that we do and how hard our guys work to get you all of that, the best content out there. What else happened in recruiting? Are we getting to Jahsiear Rogers, speaking of the receivers and maybe a little bit underrated in this class?
Yeah, and I want to plug Ryan's Inside Lash from last Friday because it was terrific, breaking down Penn State's top offensive targets that were left off of the big board. The big board was 20 players long, and I think Ryan listed 30 more on the offensive side of the ball or something like that. It is a enormously large board at this point, which is kind of what you expect, especially when you start opening the doors a little bit more nationally, and trying to get those guys in for official visits. And they'll have 55, 60 official visits this summer. And the class is always going to end up at 25, 27, something like that. So there's a lot to like there. Jahsiear Rogers is very good. As we switch gears, video went up this week. It was expected. Like, I have been very, very high on Jahsiear Rogers, the highest I've been on a receiver at Penn State probably for a while now. Just his explosiveness, his athleticism. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He's 5'11", so 5'10 and a half, 5'11". Goes up and gets the ball and does some amazing things. So always fun to watch the highlights, especially when you've got an athlete like that who's a legit 4.3 kid, just explosive as all get out. It's fun to watch. Jahsiear Rogers is going to continue to trend up. We have him, T. Frank, you have that handy?
90?
We have him as a 4-star in 231 overall. I think he's just going to keep going up. I'm hesitant to go 5-star because I know what that brings with it. And I know that that's very, very top of the top type stuff. And I would love to see more out of him. I would love to see, it's unfortunate that Delaware is the sort of what everybody comes back to because the competition is not great, but all the numbers are terrific. Somebody just mentioned his reach in the chat. Yes, his reach is very good as well. So he's got all these numbers that make sense for a top 100 kid. Yeah. Some people have mentioned 5 stars. Again, that's such a stretch because I remember Penn State fans wanted Caden Saunders to be a 5-star, and That's not it. I feel much, much better about Jahsiear Rogers, just because of the athletic capabilities that he has. The way that he moves is different than a lot of the guys that he's brought in. So I'm very high
Yeah.
on him. And again, if you're referencing 2026 scholarship or recruiting rankings right now, just tap the brakes because updated ones will come soon. And I like Penn State's receiver class. I'm going to say it. It's Jahsiear Rogers really good. Jaquaden Guilford very good
Yeah.
as well. LeVar Keys has surprised me with his movement, but with the way that he played his junior season. Very good start. They would like to cap that off with a guy like Messiah Hampton, a guy like Connor Salmon, Travis Johnson down in Virginia, Davion Brown down in Virginia, and then there's some other guys out of the region that are going to pop up on campus either this spring or summer. So the board probably not as distinct and widespread as that offensive line or that defensive line, but you got 3 commitments already, and they're pretty good ones. So I'm encouraged with the way that Marcus Higgins has recruited in 2026. There, I said it. Just have at it.
Yeah, there's always a comment of, yeah, what about the receivers coach? And we had the same conversation. I'm not saying that the results are going to be the same, but we had the same conversation about Phil Troutwine, and now everyone is he's everybody's hero from the Penn State recruiting perspective and the Penn State fan perspective, if you've been following along with all of that. So, that's just to say the story now is not how the story is going to end. Fitz, we've got the Thursday recruiting show, and of course, we're going to get into more detail and all that stuff. But do you have anything in mind previewing BlueWhiteIllustrated.com coverage of recruiting this week? Anything you got or Ryan is working on that we can promote here on the show?
I believe Ryan working on the defensive version of that, which is really interesting because there's more defensive targets or there's more defensive space in this class. It's 6-3 right now in terms of offense. So you're going to look at the defensive line, which I think is very intriguing, especially with the talent in the region. Jackson Ford set up a spring visit. He wrote about that this morning. But that edge board is enticing, especially after 2025 when it was all over the map. And Penn State ended up okay, but it's very, very much more well-stocked this year for Deion Barnes to make something happen.
All right. We are going to, of course, cover, as I said, more this week at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com and on the Thursday recruiting show. As always, subscribe, like the video. That helps us immensely with YouTube and all that stuff.